He doesn't do a lot of TV interviews. That interview coming up in just a few minutes. Also, Newt Gingrich will be with us tonight. But first, our opening monologue. It's going to focus on two major points that was brought up by Rush, the king of talk radio, and they have to do with President Trump's agenda, the NFL, the national anthem controversy. We're going to cover all of that in tonight's Florida Live. Very important opening monologue. All right, so today we traveled down to Florida to talk with the leading conservative voice in the country, the one and only Rush Limbaugh. Now, that interview is coming up later tonight. But first, we asked Rush about Republicans in Washington and what they must do to finally start passing you, the people's agenda, the president's agenda. Let's take a look.
This is the deal. I really believe that if for just 3 months going forward, or if they had been 3 months in the past, just 3 months, gut it up for 3 months and work with Trump on his agenda on cutting taxes seriously across the board, immigration reform, the wall, what have you, getting rid of Obamacare, which is just, it's an absolute crime what has happened here and what that's going to mean to the country. Just try for 3 months. Make it look like there's unity between the president and the people of his own party, and they would own Washington for a generation.
Rush makes a great point. 3 months. You know what? This isn't that difficult. Shouldn't be that complicated. And where's the Republican vision and action on passing the president's agenda? In other words, where's their spine, their backbone in fighting for their concerns? And also, where's their honor, their dignity to keep their word, their promises? So is repealing, replacing Obamacare and creating health care savings accounts and health care cooperatives. We've discussed this on this program for years, cutting taxes, cutting regulations, energy independence. Is it really that hard to get done? Now, they've been promising they would do these things for years and years. And by the way, more importantly, where is the sense of urgency to help the millions of forgotten men and women in this country that we always talk about? Help those people. This is what the election was all about, and it's what we tell you every single night. 50 million Americans in poverty, on food stamps. You know what? The lowest labor participation rate since the 70s. Right now, Republicans do need to unite. 3 months he talked about. Get the job done. Now, just take a look at how they did come together earlier today when Congressman Steve Scalise, when he returned to the House floor for the first time since that terrible shooting. You know what? That's the type of unity that Congress needs, and it's going to better serve the country. Now, on the topic of taxes, President Trump did unveil his plan yesterday for massive cuts, sweeping reform in the mold of Presidents Ronald Reagan and John F. Kennedy. Now, what those two former presidents did, it worked, and we have decades of hard evidence now to back it all up. Now, back in 1962, 1 year after I was born, at the Economic Club of New York, then President John F. Kennedy, he gave a speech about cutting taxes and unleashing the American economy. Democrats in Congress who oppose President Trump's plan, maybe you guys should pay close attention because you have no agenda. Watch this.
The final and best means of strengthening demand among consumers and business is to reduce the burden on private income and the deterrents to private initiative which are imposed by our present tax system. And this administration pledged itself last summer to an across-the-board, top-to-bottom cut in personal and corporate income taxes to be enacted and become effective in 1963. I'm not talking about a quickie or a temporary tax cut, which would be more appropriate if a recession were imminent. Nor am I talking about giving the economy a mere shot in the arm to ease some temporary complaint.
Wow. Now, President Kennedy, he slashed the top marginal tax rate from 90 to 77%. And guess what happened? The economy soared. Millions of jobs were created, and revenue to the federal government, lower taxes, it didn't go down, it increased. And then when Ronald Wilson Reagan came into office, he started a tax revolution that forever by letting you, the American people, keep more of your hard-earned money. Now, here's what President Reagan said back in 1981, the first year he was president.
If the tax cut goes to you, the American people, in the third year, that money returned to you won't be available to the Congress to spend. And that, in my view, is what this whole controversy comes down to. Are you entitled to the fruits of your own labor? Or does government have some presumptive right to spend and spend and spend? In a few days, the Congress will stand at the fork of two roads. One road is all too familiar to us. It leads ultimately to higher taxes. It merely brings us full circle back to the source of our economic problem. Government decides that it knows better than you what should be done with your earnings, and in fact how you should conduct your life. The other road promises to renew the American spirit. It's a road of hope and opportunity. It places the direction of your life back in your hands where it belongs.
And then during Reagan's presidency, he enacted historic tax cuts and reform. Now, let's take a look at this. Reagan slashed the top marginal tax rate from 70 to 28% in the course of his presidency. Economic growth, it took off in a way America has not seen since. In 1984, GDP hit 7.3%. Now compare that to President Obama. He was the first president in history to never have an entire year at even 3% GDP growth. And on top of all that, Reagan created 20 million new jobs after the 1982 recession. Revenues to the government, again, they doubled. And America saw the longest period of peacetime economic growth. Now, what Ronald Reagan did worked, and it changed the trajectory of the country forever. Now, President Trump, modern day, he's trying to do the same thing. Now, take a look at what the president said while he was unveiling his new tax plan yesterday. Watch this.
This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and I guess it's probably something I could say that I'm very good at. I've been waiting for this for a long time. We're going to cut taxes for the middle class, make the tax code simpler and more fair for everyday Americans, and we are going to bring back the jobs and wealth that have left our country, and most people thought left our country for good. We want tax reform that is pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-worker, pro-family, and yes, tax reform that is pro-American.
And now Democrats, now they have no solutions. They're already coming out in full force against President Trump's plan, and they're going to insist that any bill that passes, it has to soak the rich in taxes. But that's not what Reagan did. And what these obstructionist Democrats won't tell you is this. Top-earning Americans already pay way more than their fair share. For example, the top 1% of wage earners in the country, they contribute 39.5% of personal federal income taxes. The top 10% of Americans, they pay 70.9%. Now let's compare that. The bottom 50% of wage earners in America, they pay 2.8%. And there's almost, and this is a good fact, that 35% of tax filers, they pay zero, zip, nada, nothing. And by the way, they'll pay even less under President Trump's plan, which, of course, the media is not highlighting. Now, President Trump has momentum in growing the economy, which is why we need tax reform. You want to make it better. We want the engine to soar. Second quarter, GDP was just revised upwards to 3.1%. Much better than Obama. Compare that to him. The first president in history never reached 3% GDP growth in a single year of his presidency. That's history. Pay attention. Kennedy, Reagan, Obama. One side works, one doesn't. And since his election, President Trump, he's worked with all of these companies to bring jobs back to America, to help the forgotten men and women. And the Trump administration, they have either pulled or suspended 860 burdensome Obama-era regulations. Now, like Rush was saying earlier tonight, putting the agenda in place to fix the economy, it shouldn't take Republicans in Congress longer than 3 months. And unlike the rest of the conspiracy theory, fake news channels out there, you know what, on this program, we made you a promise on Monday. We are interested in solutions. We want to help people. So, to Congress tonight, it's time to get to work. Get the job done. Is 3 months of hard work serving the American people, is it really that hard? And also tonight, the fallout continues over some in the NFL disrespecting our flag, our national anthem, and of course our military. Now, I also asked Rush, this interview coming up in a minute, about this controversy. He's a huge NFL fan. Take a look.
They're backtracking now. Well, this is not about protesting the flag. This is not about... Yeah, of course it is. They try to say that's how it all got started. If they really wanted to make it, you think they could, if one of these players or group of them called you and said, we want a half hour on your show, would you give it to them?
100%.
Why'd they do that? Why are they messing around on the sideline, disrespecting the flag, disrespecting the anthem? What's the point? They're not accomplishing anything except harming the enterprise. Whatever's happening in the NFL right now, it's not how you grow it.
You know what? That's a great idea from Rush. And as I said to him, I'll be more than happy. I'll invite NFL players, coaches, owners, those who protest the national anthem. You're invited on the show. We'll give you an hour. We'll give you 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it takes. And you know what? We'll do a town hall. You want to fill up a football stadium? We'll even do that for you. You know what? All of you can come. All you have to do is show up. And by the way, if you're really interested in solving problems and finding solutions for this country, then I think it's time that we've got to talk about solutions. And you know what? We can solve a lot of problems. Let's talk about reducing violence in places like Chicago. Let's discuss ways to improve America's horrific, broken educational system. Want to have a conversation? How about helping the millions of people in this country who have been left behind? 13 million more Americans on food stamps, 8 million more Americans in poverty under Obama, and we doubled the national debt. You know what? What we don't need is people like the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs, Greg Popovich, using this issue to try and divide the country even further. Don't believe me? Take a look at this.
Our country's an embarrassment in the world. There has to be an uncomfortable element in the discourse for anything to change. You know, whether it's the LGBT movement or, women's suffrage, race, it doesn't matter. People have to be made to feel uncomfortable, and especially white people, because we're comfortable. We still have no clue of what being born white means.
Does that really help the country? Now, unfortunately, there are people like that, and especially on the left, they try to exploit, especially in this case, the NFL protests, and a lot of people want to advance a political agenda, political causes. And as President Trump has said repeatedly, this comes down to simple, basic, fundamental respect. Respect for the flag, respect for our anthem, respect for the military that fought under that flag. Now, the national anthem is something, it should bring every single American together. For some reason, there are people who are trying to now use it to tear us apart. All right, joining us now with reaction, the author of Liberalism or How to Turn Good Men into Whiners, Weenies, and Wimps, former NFL player, also he won a Super Bowl, Burgess Owen, and the Reverend Oliver White of Grace Community United Church. As you know, Burgess Owen, I'm a huge fan. I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
How you doing, Sean? Well, I tell you, first of all, I'm very, very proud to have a president who has the courage and the love for our country to have this come up as a topic. This is a national conversation should have been having for many years. The problem we're having in the black community, the lack of hope, has not just appeared in the last few months. It's been over 8-10 years with a black president who never addressed the issues that are now happening in the black community. 83% of black teen males not working. 70% of black men abandoning their family. I mean, I go to the litany of failure, and it's all because of a democratic socialist agenda to make sure that misery is used as a political strategy. So I'm glad that we can finally have this conversation, and at the very end of the day, we're going to have some solutions, and I'm very excited about that too.
That's a good point. That's all facts, all true. Reverend White, I want to ask you, the fact is, the reality is, disproportionately, when you talk about the 13 extra million Americans on food stamps and 8 million more Americans in poverty, those were the 8 years of Obama, and we doubled the national debt. Disproportionately, black Americans, Hispanic Americans, they were impacted. Those policies didn't work. Kennedy's policies worked, Reagan's policies worked, and Trump is proposing the same thing.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to be back with you, Mr. Hannity. It's been a long time. Why haven't you come to visit my church yet?
I never got an invitation, but if you're inviting me, I'll come.
Well, you just mentioned about a town hall. We would like for you to come to South St. Paul, but let me address this issue. You will come. You promise. We'll look for you.
I make a promise. I will come. Yes, sir.
Yeah. You know, in my opinion, no president can solve all the problems that we have. I think that President Trump has done some good things, and there are some things that he has done that I disagree with. But basically, I disagree with the way he talks. I think his rhetoric is disparaging. I think it downs
Reverend,
people.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but Reverend, we have kids dying in Chicago. We have millions of Americans in poverty on food stamps. They can't get a job. You know, with all due respect, how somebody talks is not impacting people's lives every day. And if I ask you what is the real reason the players are doing this, I bet you can't give me a coherent answer.
I think I can. And let me do it metaphorically speaking. Let's say, for example, metaphorically, every Sunday, I ask people to stand and turn to a certain hymn in our hymnal. Now, what if someone in the congregation decide not to stand? Would it be appropriate for me to say to my ushers, hey, next time they sit down, throw those SOBs
Did anybody die?
out of the church?
Anybody die? But and I'll throw this to Burgess Owens. And by the way, is Burgess allowed to come with us for the town hall? I'd like to invite him with us. I think it's only fair.
And I would love to be there. I would love to be there.
But
well, he can come
people die?
If Cornel
people
West
died fighting under that flag, sir. All right, Burgess, I want to give you the
Can I please add in here? Let me tell you what our flag represents and our country represents. It's a place of hope. It's a place of second chances. And we have these young men that are now literally millionaires and billions of dollars represented on that sideline, and they have no clue that we, the people, they are the solutions, because they've been brought up in this socialist, liberal, Marxist environment in which they're not given hope. So let's not talk about the way a president talks. Let's talk about what parties do. And the Democratic Party has failed the black community for decades. And personally, I'm sick and tired of us being portrayed as a hapless race, that white people did all these things to us because we don't know our history. So let's man up, learn our history, find out that not only did we give a lot to this country, but we got a lot from this country. And we're the freest country in the history of mankind. We just elected a president for 8 years, guys, and here we are talking about black oppression? Give me a break. Let's go out there, let's educate our kids, let's get involved in the free enterprise system, let's man up and tell people, if I can do it, you can do it. If we do that, then we'll get our country back, we get our race back, and to be the race that I grew up in, which is very proud, productive, Christian, patriotic race that I think we need to get back to this country and move forward again.
Well, Mr. Burgess, you know, some of the things you said I agree with. But you're not looking at the fact that a president of the United States, a person who holds the highest office in the land, has to exercise a certain measure of decorum. And President Trump doesn't do that. And that causes
you're worried
an
about
issue.
You're worried about decorum, and kids are dying. How many kids were shot and dying in Chicago, Obama's hometown? I think he mentioned it 3 times in his presidency.
Can I just say this one thing, because we're talking about the president. How about the leadership in the black community? How about if we, instead of looking for a president as being our God or our great answer of all the deals, how about the grassroots leaders in the community that can reach out and touch these kids and mentor them and tell them they're great, they can do great things? We're lacking in that. So let's not talk about the president of the United States when we're lacking in terms of the leadership within our black communities at this point.
I don't think that's true.
Burgess, I hope I've got to run, but I'm out of time. But I hope I will come to your church. Burgess Owen, I'd love to go with you if you'd like to come too. I think it would be a productive meeting, and I look forward to it. Let me know, Reverend, when you want me. And yeah, you can come, sure. And coming up, my exclusive interview with the king of conservatism in America, Rush Limbaugh, straight ahead. And welcome back to Hannity Tonight, reporting from Florida. Radio legend Rush Limbaugh sat down with me earlier today for an exclusive one-on-one interview from his studio in Florida. And we started talking about the Republican Party. Take a look. You don't do a lot of TV interviews, you know?
I don't. I'm totally satisfied with radio. I want for nothing. I love it so much. But this is special. Because, Sean, I'll tell you, so the reason America is still America is in this room.
You mean the camera people and you?
All of us, but you and me. It's an honor to do this. It's great to be back on Fox News. And I'm actually grateful for the opportunity here to be on the week you're going back to 9 p.m. where you should have been all along. So
thank you.
Happy to be here.
We appreciate it. I want to start with tax cuts. Yeah. All the years you've talked about it. Kennedy, Reagan, how it works. When?
Well, you know, it's good overall. I mean, there's some things about it. Let's look at the elimination of the deduction of state income tax. You know who's going to hate that? California, Illinois, all these blue states. That's going to cause a shortfall for them. Those taxpayers are not going to like it. And if you look at the states with the highest state income tax rates, most of them are blue. But here's my basic problem with this. I keep hearing everybody say growth, growth, but the top rate probably isn't going to come down or much at all. And that's where the growth is. Those are the people that hire. Those are the people that own small business. Those are the people that spend. We still have a tax system and a way of explaining it that's rooted in class envy. We're going to give the middle class, the lower middle class, upper middle class a break, but the rich, we're going to soak them. They don't need a tax break. They don't got enough. And besides, they say we have to have a way to pay for it. What do you mean pay for it? Why can't Washington do with less? For once, we got growth from Reagan a whole year. I saw you talking about it last night. How? Top marginal rate over 8 years went 70 to 28%. Look what happened. Why not do it again? The reason is everybody's afraid they'll lose votes of the middle class because there's far more of them than there are people in the upper bracket. The top 10% are paying 70% of all income taxes. And how can you say they're not paying their fair share? And why do we want to punish them further? If you really want growth, lower everybody's taxes across the board and get out of the way for all the revenues to be coming in.
He's going to have a corporate tax. Trump wanted 15. Yeah. It's going to be 20. Reconciliation kicks in, so they say. But what's interesting is, all right, the corporate tax is reduced. The repatriation is good. You're right. New York, California, New Jersey, Illinois, they don't get to deduct. I'm in New York, it's 10%. Right. California's 13.5%. Exactly. So lower rate, they might have 39 to 35, but they'll pay more.
They're going to be paying more. And I've talked to some very powerful people. You know, I'm a powerful, influential member of the media. I have access to powerful people. And they're laying this all off on the president. This upper bracket, no movement. And because they know when I talk to them that I'm going to be interested in across the board, everybody, because they're the ones talking growth. They're not saying we need to do this to generate revenue. They're saying we need to do this to reboost the economy. Well, why are you going to leave out the people that hire? Why don't we use those people as role models, inspirations? It's typical class warfare. But anyway, the guy that I was talking to says, well, don't talk to me. The president wants this. The president's insisting. And the president said that guys like him don't need a tax break. So they're laying this all off on him. When I hear we have to find a way to pay for it, that's Washington establishment talk. That's Democrat talk, paying for tax cuts. This thing, first day it's presented, is never going to be how it ends up if they get a vote on it. But don't misunderstand, there's some great things in this. Personal exemption doubles, repatriation is good. But the thing that bothers me is that we still want to demonize and punish achievers.
I was excoriated for saying I worked in restaurants since I was 12.
Right.
Worked in construction for years. I was demonized for saying I never got a job from a poor person.
Right.
Ever.
Well, you're not supposed to say those things. You're not supposed to say things that contradict the narrative. And the narrative it's all about getting reelected. It's all about trying to claim that they have things in common with the middle class, the downtrodden, and so forth. That's why I don't think it's really about growth. It's about politics and getting votes.
Let's talk about the Republican Party. We saw what happened with health care. Let's get your general impressions on health care. And I'm convinced there's a pretty significant percentage of Republicans in the Senate. They do not want this president to succeed.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he goes further than that. I don't think they expected to win. I think they, like everybody, thought Trump was going to lose in the biggest way. I think they thought that at 8 o'clock on election night. They weren't preparing to govern. They hadn't laid any plans for it. They have become accustomed to being the, quote, loyal opposition, which means eventually caving and give the Democrats what they want after putting up a good front. 7 years, going to repeal or replace Obamacare, but we can't do it unless you give us the House. Can't do it till the Senate. Can't do it in the White House. Gave them all of that. You know the drill. And you're right. They don't want to do it. I think that the voters come second. It's kind of like this NFL thing. The owners there have a real conundrum, a real dilemma. Who do they choose? They choose loyalty to their players and their customers. That's a tough decision. Well, Republicans in the Senate and the House, who do they choose, donors or voters? And I think they're choosing donors. The donors don't want major reform of anything. The donors want amnesty. The donors want comprehensive immigration reform. When it comes to health care, you can tell for 7 years, They passed bills with no problem. You could tell they didn't want to do it. You could tell they didn't want to repeal and replace it. They were just saying the words. And they all have their own individual reasons, but I think it's donors influencing more than voters. We'll see. But this is an embarrassment. I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's being totally squandered. We're never going to have this chance again.
You actually said that if they were smart, and all they would do is keep their promises, they would govern for generations.
This is the deal. I really believe that if for just 3 months going forward, or if they had been 3 months in the past, just 3 months, gut it up for 3 months and work with Trump on his agenda, on cutting taxes seriously across the board, immigration reform, the wall, what have you, getting rid of Obamacare, which is just, it's an absolute crime what has happened here and what that's going to mean to the country. Just try for 3 months. Make it look like there's unity between the president and the people of his own party, and they would own Washington for a generation.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right. I'm looking at the Republican Party. I think Trump has a strong identity. Ran on a platform, sticks to it. Every speech sounds just like his campaign speech. Where's the brilliant ideas? How many years on radio have you talked about health savings accounts, healthcare cooperatives? We don't hear about that. How many times have we heard about the wall? I don't see them embracing strong ideas and going and selling them, which I think they'd win on the...
I don't think they're conservative. I don't think they ever have been. I think they are... Look, there isn't much conservatism in the establishment. There are Republicans and Democrats, but it's basically people who are pro-government, pro-Washington, who think government Washington's the center of the world. They'll give occasional mentions of these things that you mentioned, these policies, to placate voters. But going back to an original question you had here, they don't want Trump to succeed with his agenda. They can't afford that. I'm not exaggerating here, and I'm not trying to say things that'll be a soundbite that Fox replays the rest of the day. They don't want
5 days, Rush. They'll play it 5 days.
They can't afford for him to succeed with his agenda. They can't afford it. The lid's blown. The gig is over. The joke is revealed. If an outsider with no prior political experience can come in and fix messes that people have been promised would be fixed for 30 years, how does that make them look? They can't allow that to happen.
All right, when we come back, more of my exclusive interview with Rush Limbaugh. He will weigh in on the NFL, the national anthem controversy, and Newt Gingrich. Straight ahead. Welcome back to Hannity as we report from Florida tonight. Rush Limbaugh has been one of the strongest voices against NFL players protesting our flag, our national anthem, and he's one of the NFL's biggest fans. Here's what he had to say earlier today. Let me go to the NFL. All right. I want to read what you said because I've listened to you all the years you've been on radio, and you're probably the biggest NFL fan I've ever known. You love the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I do.
You saw what happened in the Pittsburgh game, and you actually said that, and you've been pointing this out, it's bigger than life to you, the NFL, and for the first time in 45 years, you weren't excited, and that the myth that you've always had about these players in the NFL is gone.
Totally gone now.
Totally gone. You can't recover it?
I don't, well, maybe, I hope. See, that's the thing. I woke up Sunday morning after President made his comments in Alabama on Friday, and I'm looking at the way the media is covering it and what's intended to happen on Sunday. And I'm saying they've hijacked the game. The left has hijacked this game. It used to be a respite. It used to be a place you go to escape all this. I really, you think of the players, they can do things we can't do when they're performing at optimum level. It is just incredible to watch the talent that's on display. And to watch them now get caught up into something that I don't even think they understand. They're backtracking now. Well, this is not about protesting the flag. This is not about. Yes, of course it is. They try to say that's how it all got started. If they really wanted to make, you think they could? If one of these players or group of them called you and said, "We want a half hour on your show," would you give it to them?
100%.
Why did they do that? Why are they messing around on the sideline, disrespecting the flag, disrespecting the anthem? What's the point? They're not accomplishing anything except harming the enterprise. Whatever's happening in the NFL right now, it's not how you grow it.
You said the owners are clueless. You said this is about race. And I think the most profound thing you said is they're now being used by the left in this country that wants to take away institutions, and that the NFL is an anathema to the left.
Well, you know, saying this is risky because I firmly believe it.
Don't get in trouble.
Don't
get in trouble. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying that people don't look, when I say what I'm going to say, people are going to react, oh, come on, are you serious? I just want to tell you I am. And this is why I'm so concerned. I do believe that the left wants to cause great damage to the NFL. What does the NFL stand for? Masculinity, strength, toughness. So what are they doing to it? You go to college campuses now and you'll find classes on how to take masculinity out of men. It's actually happening. There are studies and courses in college to do this. It's patriotic. You've got the flag, you've got the anthem, you've got uniformed military personnel. All the things that the left wants to erase from this country. They don't like displays of patriotism, strength, rugged individualism. And that's why the players are being used here. They think it's about police brutality. They think it's about righting social wrongs and so forth. This is an attack on the NFL as an institution for shaking it down and lowering its profile and impact on American culture. In the midst of a culture war, everybody knows it. The left is doing everything it can to erase elements of our country's founding, the traditions and institutions, and they don't stop. And once they get their hooks in something, this is why I'm sad about it. They're not going to let go of this. So when I see the owners, they got to be scared to death. They have to be scared to death. On the one hand, that they side with their players, linking arms, go to the sideline, take a knee or whatever. That's just driving the central fan base away. I almost think that is part of the strategy. If you did want to damage the NFL, what would you do? You would do something to cause its fan base to leave it. What's happening?
This isn't going to end well, is it?
No, well, I hope it does. See, I love this so much that I live in constant optimism. This can be overcome, and we can get back to it. But the problem is, Sean, everybody in management, everybody in corporate America is under the false impression that this is a leftist liberal country. It isn't. It's made to look it because the media is, and the media promotes it, and the media narrative is that America has progressed and now conservatism is a minority, or that way of thinking is a minority. And so everybody in corporate America who thinks they need to find a way to convince people to pay them, buy their product or whatever, is under a misunderstanding of who their audience. Look who advertises the NFL. Ford, F1, everything that supposedly causes climate change are the #1 advertiser in the NFL. Guys, beer, who's being assaulted and attacked on all this. And the owners and the commissioner, I don't know what their individual politics are. I don't think they understand what's happening to them. I don't think they understand what's going on. They think they're relating to the majority of their fan base. They're not. They're driving them away. And I hate it. I don't want the NFL to get smaller. I don't want it to become insignificant. I don't want it to be taken over by a bunch of wusses. I don't want it to be taken over by left-wing social justice causes. You know, use something besides the NFL sideline. Use something besides a flag. Use something besides something that people use to escape everything leftists are trying to force on us.
I'll give them hours on my show. Not
you hear
an
that?
hour.
Hours. Let's see if they take you up on it.
Seriously, tell me what you care about. I have a big debate. I'll do hour-long debates.
You know what you're going to find?
Right.
This is going to. I think, Sean, that a lot of, I don't know what the percentages are, a lot of these players really believe hands up, don't shoot. They really don't.
Never happened.
It didn't happen, but the media says it did.
Yeah.
And social justice warriors on the left, the civil rights community, continue to say it did. You can't blame them if that's the only media they trust, if that's the only media they watch. There's that aspect of it. There are also, the police brutality overall that they think more blacks are killed in Chicago than have by other blacks.
Nobody talks about it.
Nobody talks because it doesn't fit the narrative. But if they're really concerned about all of the horrible things happening to them, or African Americans, it isn't happening in the NFL. 75% of the league is African American and wealthy and loved and adored and hero worshipped. And yet it makes no sense. And it saddens me. I loved it. I didn't watch football Sunday. I couldn't.
I watched college football.
Well, I'm not a big fan of that either because of cheap uniforms. I didn't go to college. I don't have an elbow. They do look not as flashy.
Ouch. I can't.
I told Lou Holtz that.
Yeah.
He was coaching South Carolina. He understood what I meant, so we're cool. But really, I'm going to be playing golf on Sundays now. It's just not, Sean, it's not the same. You're watching it, and the media can't wait to tell us of all the discord.
They never show the fans booing, though.
No, they'll show
that.
you the players dissing the flag.
All over. All right, we're just getting started. We will have part 2 of our interview with Rush, exclusive tomorrow. But when we come back, Newt Gingrich will weigh in on Congress, the NFL, and much more. Straight ahead. And welcome back to Hannity. Joining us now, the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Understanding Trump, and he has a new online course he'll tell us about. Fox News contributor, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. And by the way, his online course, his series is entitled Defending America. It's up on my website, Hannity.com. Mr. Speaker, good to see you. You know, I think back, and I was with Rush today, and he played a very integral part in 1994, when you brought the Republicans to Congress for the first time in 40 years, the contract with America. But what I was thinking as I was interviewing him today, you kept your promises, and you made it different. You balanced the budget, welfare reform. You had major transformative things happen. Rush is saying 3 months if they just get their backbone stronger.
Well, let me say, first of all, it was great to watch him tonight on your show. It's the first time I've seen him on TV in a long time. And you're exactly right. I think without Rush, we might not have won in 1994. He was the clear voice for millions and millions of conservatives all across the country, many of whom would stay in their car to listen to the last half hour, or they just wouldn't get out. They wouldn't give him up. So Rush has had a remarkable historic impact on the country. His instincts are as good as they ever were, and he's as worth listening to and thinking about as anybody I know. And he analyzes things from angles nobody else can match. It was great of you to have him on tonight.
Now, listen, there's no doubt he understands the left, and conservatism has a great take on it. But I want to focus a little bit more on, he sort of laid out a challenge, I felt, to the Republicans. For 3 months, just stick to your agenda, you know, suck it up, let's get these things done. You guys made these promises, and they can literally govern for generations, and I agree with them.
I agree. Look, I brought a prop tonight. I don't usually do this. You know that. This is the Paul Ryan postcard income tax return. Their estimate is that 85% of the people who currently are itemizing under the new Republican tax cuts, this is all they'll fill out, which will give them a second tax cut of all the money they're currently spending to get some tax preparer or some tax lawyer or some accountant. It saves literally billions and billions of additional dollars. But here's a simple test. If by Thanksgiving the Paul Ryan income tax postcard becomes law, I think you're going to find out that they are doing exactly what Rush suggested. This is visible. It applies to virtually every average American. It is clear. They're going to be producing these so that everybody can have a copy. You can show your friends and neighbors, and you can ask them. You want to keep the current system with its swamp-like complexity, with a requirement for accountants and tax lawyers and tax preparers, or do you want to go to a very simple, lower-cost system that both saves you money on taxes and saves you money on preparation? I think this is the start of what Rush is talking about.
You know, I remember every interview, and I was in Atlanta at the time, and every interview you did leading up to the election in '94, you'd go into your pocket, you'd pull out the contract with America. Right. The only really one big criticism I have, and it's kind of laughable in a way because the blue states deserve the government they voted for and put in power. New York, New Jersey, Illinois, California. You elect your politicians and your 10, 12, 13.5% state income tax, it's not going to be deductible. In a lot of ways, and by the way, I'm going to get punished, but that's fine. In a lot of ways, it's interesting because you can analyze it two ways. One way is the rest of the country has been subsidizing them because their states punish them, and they won't be punished. And Paul Ryan made this point last night. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, let me come back to this. Remember, this. I would urge every Republican in the country, just as I used to pull out the contract, pull out the Paul Ryan postcard and ask your constituents. But here's the second thing. For most of the people on Long Island, by the way, maybe not you, you've done really, really well. But for most people, by the time you get to doubling the deduction and you get to lowering the rates, the number of people in New York who are going to need some kind of deduction for state and local taxes is going to drop dramatically. So actually, for the average everyday working guy, they're not going to notice it because they're getting a great tax cut. And if you throw in the amount they're going to save by not needing a preparer or an accountant or a tax attorney, they're going to be much better off. Now, if you're some rich guy, this is what's ironic. All these liberal Democrats who tell us they want to soak the rich, guess what? They're the ones in the blue states that are about to start screaming because you have to be pretty darn wealthy to be affected by not having the state and local taxes. Say, as a conservative,
you don't get to deduct
I'm not that sympathetic. Right. And so I'm not very sympathetic when all of a sudden liberal Democrats who are millionaires
I live in those states.
Show up and go, oh, gosh, oh, I know you do, but you all remember, Florida is only an airplane away.
All I need is 6 months and a day, and I'm a resident of Florida. Those are the rules. With all that said, look, this is where my job is. I'm in Florida today, but it works just as good in Florida. You know, satellites are great technology, and it works for radio and TV.
Exactly right.
And all right, so here's the next important question. What do the Republicans need to do? I think a couple of things. I think energy is a big job producer. I like this plan that the president proposed. He's sticking to his campaign promises. I also think they better fund the wall, and they better understand the importance of it. They better not have amnesty. And if they have one other thing, the president said they might go back to health care in January or February. They really need to. Not the Schumer, Patty Murray plan. Your thoughts? They might go back to health care in January or February. They really need to. Not the Schumer, Patty Murray plan. Your thoughts?
Well, look, I want to be very simple-minded because I used to do this for a living. They ought to focus from now to Thanksgiving on one thing: get the tax cuts passed. If they have a signing ceremony the week before Thanksgiving, if overwhelmingly Americans have lower taxes, if American businesses go from one of the highest tax rates in the world to a really competitive tax rate, if we bring back trillions from overseas, then I think they've had a good fall.
All right, Mr. Speaker, we're going to watch and hold them accountable when we come back. All right, a question that I don't know if Rush was ready for. We'll give you a preview. You want to see this next.